Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we are solving minimum cost to convert string 1. So the problem description is quite long, but I can go ahead and explain it. So our goal is to convert the string in source to the target string, and we will be given an original array, and it can change to the letter in the changed array at the corresponding index, and at the corresponding index at the cost array, it will cost that much to change from that letter to that letter. And we want to return the minimum cost to convert the string source to the string target, and we can use any number of operations. So if we look at this example, A to A will not take any cost because the letter is A. B to C will have a cost of 5 because B, C, 5. Now C to B will have a cost of 3 because if you want to convert C to E, it will cost 1, and convert E to B will cost 2. So as you can see, C to E with a cost of 1. Now we want to convert E to B, it will cost 2. And to convert D to E, it will cost 20. D, E, 20, and that will total up to 28, so we return 28. In this example, each conversion from A to B will cost 3. So as you can see, A will need to convert to C first, and then C will convert to B, and then it will cost 1 to convert to C, and it will cost 2 to convert C to B. So the total is 3, and 3 times 4 is 12, so we return 12. And in this example, we cannot convert the letters because we don't have enough letters here that allow us to convert, so we return -1. So now that we have seen some examples, let's get to how we can solve this problem. So in this example, we are basically trying to find the shortest distance from one letter to another letter for each letter in the string. And as you can see, the straightforward conversion is not always the smallest cost. So as you can see, it will cost less to convert A to C first, then C to B, and that will cost 7. And for us to always figure out the smallest cost, we can set up a 2D array like this. So each index will represent a letter, and this side will represent the original letter, and this side will represent the letter it converts to. So as you can see, A to B will cost 10, and if we want to convert to C, we can do A to C, which costs 2, and then C to B, which costs 5. And if we were to put it in a formula, it would be grid of row and I plus grid of I and column. So I could be like the middle point, and this will be the letter it converts to, and this will be the original letter. So what we can do is we can set up that 2D array, and it will be 26 by 26 because there are 26 letters in the alphabet, and the array will represent the minimum cost to go from one letter to another letter. And like I said earlier, the rows will represent the first letter, and the columns will represent the letter that it converts to. And we want to initialize all elements to infinity, and after initializing that array, we will iterate through a zip array of original, changed, and cost, which are all input arrays that are given. And as we iterate, we will update accordingly based on how much it costs to change from original to changed. And after we have set up the direct conversion, then we will iterate through a triple nested for loop for the cases where we don't do a direct conversion. And we can set variables as k, I, and j, for example. And yeah, as we are iterating through this time, we can check if infinity is the smallest, or the value we calculated here is the smallest, or the value that we calculated here is the smallest. And then we will set the value at that element to whichever is the smallest. And finally, we'll just iterate through the source string and target string, and then we will add up the total cost it takes to convert. And finally, we'll return the total cost. So let's go through this example real quick. And by the way, this should be 26 by 26, but that will be way too large for me to set up. So I only set up from A to E because that's all we need for this example. So A to B will cost 2, B to C will cost 5, C to B will cost 5, C to E will cost 1, E to B will cost 2, and D to E will cost 20. And now we will do the triple nested for loop. Now it will take a bit too much time to iterate through the triple nested for loop. So I'll just show you all the values that it can convert to, and you guys can check on your own. But one thing I want to point out is this value right here. Previously it was a 5, and now that is 3, because we realized that if we want to convert C to B, we can actually convert C to E first and then E to B, and that will cost 3. And everything else you guys can check on your own. So now we will iterate through source target and find out the conversion cost. So first, A and A doesn't cost anything because it's already the letter, so move to next one. B to D will cost 5, add 5 to result. result. C to B will cause 3, add 3 to result. Convert D to E will cause 20, so we add 20 to result. And finally, the total sum is 28, so we can return 28 as our result. And the time complexity would be O of n plus m, where n would be the length of source and target, and m would be the length of original changed and cost array, because it would take this much time to iterate through these two strings, and it would take this much time to iterate through these array. And you might be wondering, what about the triple nested for loop? Well, since the length is always 26, that is a constant, so that does not change the time complexity. And the space complexity would be O of 1, because this array that we make will always be 26 by 26, so it will always be constant. So now let's get to the coding part. So first we'll set up the 2D array. So infinity times 26 for I in range 26. And we will now loop through the zip array of original change and cost. So I'll call it orig chg and cst in zip original changed and cost. Now the start would be the ASCII number of the original letter minus the ASCII number of A, and we will convert to the ASCII number of the letter in change minus the ASCII number of A, so that will give us the number we need in the cost array. Now we will set cost of start end to the minimum of the original cost or cost of start end. Now we will do the triple nested for loop. So for k in range 26 and for I in range 26 and for j in range 26, we will set cost of I and j to the minimum of cost of I and j, or it will be cost of ik plus cost of kj. And we'll initialize result to 0. Now we'll loop through the source and target string. So we'll say st in zip source target. If the two strings are equal, then we will skip it, so continue. Otherwise, we'll figure out the ASCII number. So src will be order of s minus order of a, and tgt for target will be the order of t minus order of a. And if the value at that place turns out to be infinity, then we will return -1, because that means we were not able to make a conversion. And then finally we will add the cost to result, and then finally we can return result after all the iterations. Let's see if it works. Okay, perfect. Hope this was helpful. Thank you for watching. If you have any other questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section, and I hope to see you all again soon.